Hey now. Welcome to BALLBUSTERS, guys. If you'd like to support this channel, there's PayPal and Patreon links in the info box below. Shout out to beautiful Betty, who's not going to make it today. Apparently, she's on her summer Saturday vacation schedule. So, we'll miss you. BALLBUSTERS, assemble. How's it going out there?
BALLBUSTERS!
Good evening.
Woohoo! I hate fake motivation, man. I can't stand it.
My motivation's not fake. I'm totally sincere. I'm genuinely pumped.
Yeah, man, that freaking trailer. I love how you leave the long I call it the trailer. It's the intro, but it's almost like a trailer, you know. It's almost like a little movie of its own. I love it. Great music, great graphics. I love it.
I wasn't calling you out, Nathan. I was talking about myself with a little weak woohoo. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's on me. I haven't blamed anyone else. Well, good.
Come on, BALLBUSTERS. BALLBUSTERS Live. Let's make it work.
Science. So this is one of those great subjects that back in the day when Flat Earth was new to many people who are watching this right now, we were told ad nausea that the Earth was a sphere. And why? Why is that you say it's a sphere? Well, science proves it. Well, today, like many days before, we're going to point out that no, you don't have any science for your assertion that Earth is a sphere. It's merely a philosophical idea. Science will be detailed in terms of what it actually is here today.
We're going to start it off today. We have already talked about this subject, of course, at length. We're going to go through the Master Science presentation again. I think it's appropriate and well-timed because it appears that there is no scientific method. From what I've been hearing in the channels. So I said to myself, well, I think it's about time to come out and go ahead and establish this with everyone again. And when one of those crayon munchers say there is no scientific method, or there's 5 scientific methods, or what's science, and science is just what we make up, and those types of things, well, you could put on a sharp suit and ace them. Easy, starting off with this presentation. I enjoy it. It's not going to be long. It's going to be relatively short. But this is the first one in probably 5. Yeah? Good?
Yeah,
We're all good.
let's go.
Let's go.
What, no foreplay?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention you forgot the science doesn't prove anything claim.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot that. Well, there's many that I've probably missed. I'm sure you guys will remind me.
Well, it's worth reminding it came up on the debate this week. So Michael from Vsauce, back in the tail end of 2019, had made a statement in regards to Earth's sphericity, but then declared that he couldn't prove that because he couldn't prove it with science. Science doesn't prove anything. Well, he's a fairly well-known, Vsauce is a fairly big channel, and he's a fairly well-known YouTuber making that exact declaration that science doesn't prove anything.
I heard him. I couldn't believe that he said it. And I thought the butt ripping was appropriate that you gave him. I couldn't believe he said that. But that's where it's come to, right? Where do they get this? They just heard it before and they mindlessly parrot it? Or where are they getting this from?
From every pretender clown that someone like Vsauce has ever spoken to, and they've had a claim of science that clearly hasn't been through the scientific method. It's been peppered with weasel words that make declarations of science not proving anything. All these pseudoscientists will make their declarations in terms of how science is evolving and science is there to disprove things and designed to move on and clarify things that you thought you had right before but may change in the future. In other words, it's just a justification when they say science, or they're just so stories which absolutely have no scientific validity. So they often come along with stories of how science really isn't proving anything, but I'm just using that word because you were trained as a kid to understand that it's an empirical method. Therefore, when I say that word science, when I'm testing tires, That'll make you think that everything I say and present in terms of the mathematics for that test, not scientific, is valid by way of science. And it isn't. It's not an empirical measure. It's just a measurement that they give you. But they'll say science, and it'll make you think that it's got more validity than it actually has.
Yes, sir. Exactly. Yep. And it fools everyone, right? Especially Joe Coffey and Betty Breadmaker, because they know their target audience, and they know that they don't have any science acumen to speak of, so they can get away with it. That's
In the start.
Go ahead.
I tended to find that I would focus in on everything that was globe programming because I just found out it wasn't true. So suddenly your eye is drawn to every billboard, every poster, every bit of subliminal messaging that's got globe in it. Whereas now, I'm hopefully past that, you just accept that that's the way the Western world is. But I do still hear it every time I watch something, can hear them parrot off science. So before we started the live show, I was talking about my woes with amplifier ratings and subwoofers. I'm not going to detail it here, don't worry. Nevertheless, the people who I'm watching on YouTube that are talking about the measurements that they're making will make statements like, this is just science. Like, no, it isn't. What bloody hell are you babbling about? But they're so used to it, and this is Joe Coffey and Betty Breadmaker, as you call them. They don't appreciate they've just been swindled with a load of pseudoscience labelled as science, and therefore when they're applying their own mathematics to the measurement of a wire or the impedance of an amplifier, suddenly that's science. Well, no, you are now equally as guilty of purveying pseudoscience where you haven't been through the scientific method. But everyone's guilty of it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's just by, how would I want to say? I don't know. I don't want to say linguistic programming, but the power of suggestion through linguistics and then muddying the waters, like you said, right? Back in the day, in grade school, they'd bring up the subject science. Mike, discipline, please.
Mike.
We good? All right. Back in the day, in grade school, when, they first introduced you to science, they gave you the right science. They gave you the scientific method. Like I said, I remember seeing it on the board. And I said, that's pretty cool. And I can remember thinking that follows logically, right? And then, of course, we did a couple just small experiments, to incorporate each step so everyone would get a familiarity with it, right? But then the next day, that same subject, science, astronomy would be brought in. It would be, the disheveled little monkey astronomy or whatever. Just fill it in with your favorite pseudoscience. And it's already in the textbook at, under the arches of science. And we just rolled along with it. Well, nobody, I didn't even do it, would raise my hand and said, well, wait a second. Didn't we just go over science yesterday? That's science, scientific method. Can you show me the scientific method here? I didn't do it. I have to admit. I was looking forward to recess, but that's what they do. They still do it.
Yeah, and when their priests are telling them, like Neil deGrasse Tyson does, that science is correct whether you like it or not, he's making an absolutely factually accurate statement. If you have put something through the scientific method, you have proved or disproved your alternative hypothesis, validated your null or validated your alternative. Therefore, you have the empirical method at your disposal. And he's correct. However, he's not doing any science, but he uses the word all the time. So it gives you this idea, it reaffirms this notion, which is correct, that science is empirical. It's right whether you like it or not, if it's been through the method. He just doesn't say that. He then will go on to tell you all about the science of the stars and the science of Einstein, and it isn't.
It's a really like bumbling Elmer Fudd, Mr. Magoo trick, isn't it? Because it's right there in front of your face. But no one seems to care. No one seems to say anything about it. But
Well,
I
there's been
remember.
a few more
Go ahead.
the PhDs, though, hasn't there, of recent days? So there's a few people who, in my humble opinion, I'm not divining their thoughts, but they've recognised that there's something at stake now. Their credibility and their authority that they asserted with this vernacular of science is being taken away from them by us. I'm very proud to do it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying here is it's such a weasel little trick. It's not complicated the way they did it. I'm thinking back to my grade school example. It's not that complicated. They just, with the power of suggestion, just kept moving on in that science subject. I always say the archway, it has science written over top of it. And what does that fool people? If I put orangutan on the archway and put an amoeba down on the bottom, is that amoeba an orangutan?
Well, you're referring to the taxonomic classification system, which is arbitrary anyway. But yes, I see your point.
Now, I wasn't referring to it specifically because I didn't bring up genus, species, or anything else.
You are correct. Didn't anybody notice after being told in school that this method was empirical and had certain steps that had to be adhered to acquire the empiricism it offers as a method, not as a man, not as a group, not as a peer review process, but as a method that you can adhere to as a researcher. Now, if you choose to call yourself a scientist, having performed that method, based on the fact that you performed the scientific method, then more power to you. Call yourself a scientist. However, if you're going to make up a just so story about lights in the sky and base your credibility on the words and vernacular that the scientific method has within it, that would be words like science itself, hypothesis, test, and experiment. That's what they use to make you think that they've got empiricism. Like you're trying to, I'll get to your point for you, I'll steal your thunder. It's a bait and switch. Look, I've got science. Have some maths.
Got it. That's one of the techniques they use. Here's some maths for you. How you like this tensor calculus? What? You mean you can't do that? Oh, only us scientists can do that. Don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and take care of things for you. You just go back to watching American Idol, eat your cheese fries, with your bacon strips. Everything's fine. We got the maths. Clowns! You're busted. We're going to bust you up. And then I'm going to feed you to my wolf pups. You got me fired up.
Oh!
Told you. What feigned enthusiasm. I love this subject because it has tricked us all. When we first started fighting this subject, as I said right at the beginning of the show, we were told science proves we live on a spinning water ball flying through a vacuum. And science is the reason why I can assert that as fact, and the reason I can demand we beg the question of a sphere Earth with every claim that I can prove a sphere Earth. It's because of science. Well, that's now by the wayside. That is 2018 dead. Gone. Always worth reiterating, though, because it's creeping its way back in. A few little pretender clowns here and there. And a few people recognising that they need to start arguing with us because they potentially might lose their credibility if it's ever realised by the masses that they're not scientists, they're pseudoscientists.
Yep.
They don't have any science. People will start turning their nose up rather than going, oh, yes, sir. Wow, aren't you clever? Your PhD.
Not very clever. The PhDs haven't been impressing you all that much, have they?
Far from it. When they get all angry because someone like Spurs asks them for the actual science that they've got, and they get all stroppy about it, that's very amusing.
What I'm saying here is, you'd figure that you're dealing with some type of an aristocrat here. Measured, refined, methodical, but very deliberate, critical thinker. Is that what you're getting with the PhDs that you've run into or frequented?
No, dealing with complete retards. For an example, well, we've got Thunderfoot, the most recent videographer, make a video about me, and it's in a second response format. I've called him out for being a pretender clown muppet. He's made a video about me. I've responded to it, and now he's made a second video. So we're into like fourth back and forth of this particular exchange. And he's essentially doubled down by saying, you don't understand because I've made it so simple, flat earthers don't get it. When I describe gas, because I'm a scientist, as a solid, because I'm a retard, that's Thunderfoot Clown. Well, this is a PhD. And in years gone by, when he's debated religious fundamentalists who argue with Kent Hovind's arguments, he's made it clear that he wants to debate them on the subject of science. And his opponent in that particular example, name eludes me, did not want to. I don't want to debate science with you. That's not what I'm here for. Me, on the contrary, I absolutely do. That's what this presentation's all about, right? This is a Master of Science presentation. These people are claiming to be scientists. People like Thunderfoot with his PhD that he's happy to shove under people's noses and then go on to declare bouncy balls are gas when dealing with a flat earther. We will just point out the intermolecular... get through it without cold. The intermolecular bonds he's ignoring when he describes gas behavior with solid behavior. Now, I might as well point out at this stage that none of this is science.
Thunderfoot Clown, I'll tell you what, I don't know where he got his PhD from, but if it's authentic PhD, I can't see it. Not from what I've seen. I'm not getting it, sir. If you're a PhD scientist, I'm Mahatma Gandhi. I know second graders with more acumen than you. I'm not exaggerating. What is going on with you? Yeah, but I don't think he's ever going to come out of that echo chamber, man. You're never going to get, stranglehold on him. Right?
Slow though the process may be, he is responding. Admittedly, it's just like in a long drawn out version of a debate that's actually live and fiery, where they go round in a circle a few times before you really pummel them and get the point home, while you start, highlighting just how dumb they are for reasserting the same exact argument again, like Thunderfoot's done. Yeah. So it's this very typical behaviour. So yeah, he might assert again for the third and fourth time after this next response that I do, which has already been recorded. It was done on Friday's live show. But that response will go out and labelled Thunderfoot Clown, whatever, and he will undoubtedly triple down on his assertion that gas behaves like solid bonded bouncy balls with a single downward vector he's asserting with gravity, in spite of it being in defiance of gas law, and debunked with a helium balloon. So the fact that it's making him look really stupid doesn't mean he won't go to the effort of tripling down on it.
Sure.
That's my expectation.
Sure. I bet you're hoping for that.
Oh yeah, it's another opportunity to call him a complete clown, which he is.
Can I insert something?
Yeah, go.
All right, go ahead, Armin.
Right, I wasn't sure if you were hearing me, but anyway, yeah, you know what? Maybe Thunderfoot Clown, which he definitely is, maybe he did get a PhD back in the day, and he kind of like studied it just to get the position, and then he thought, oh, smooth sailing from there on. But he basically did nothing actually scientific with his time. He just muddied around and story blabbering and all that.
Sure.
And yeah, then you weaken all those skills, and now he has that paper, but he lost his skills because he really didn't do anything effectively scientific with it. He didn't respect the method. He didn't confront anything. So yeah, I think that's the case. And I think there's more people like this. A lot of the ballers probably we're facing have started out like that. And then just, yeah, once you realize what you gotten yourself into, you have a choice. Either you step away or you turn into a baller and you double down into infinity.
Seems like it's the latter, Arwin, going by his most recent response, which is to just double down on the same nonsense and claim we're stupid for not understanding a simplistic version that defies gas law.
I know, it's absolutely ridiculous. I'm just trying to give a dramatic back picture as to how it could have come this far.
Yeah, but that level of acumen is frigging scary. It's pathetic.
It's the darkness. It's the darkness. Insanity.
Yeah. Darkness. I don't know. I don't want to talk about him anymore. He cracks me up, freaking clown. Let's roll on. We ready?
Let's get on with the presentation. That'd be great.
Outstanding. Yeah, like I said, I always started off with this. I think it was in 2016 or 2017 I started with every single presentation I started with this just to stress it so everyone would get it. So, paleontology, anthropology, archaeology, geology, evolutionary biology. Yeah, I'm still laughing. And whatever that is, theoretical physics, non-experimental, astrophysics, astronomy, and cosmology. See, folks, these are not frigging sciences. They're just not. Basket weaving is more scientific than these clowns combined. But you're going to run into some problems, right? Because these are taught as science. I mean, through postgraduate education, right? Hey, science, astronomy is science. Booga, booga, booga. Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? No, they're not. The first 6 pretender clowns up here, see the first 6 up here in blue? They can't get to the first step of the scientific method. See, the scientific method is science. That is natural science. Without the method, it's naked. There's nothing there. It's vapor. So they can't get to the first step, observe a natural phenomenon, without a time machine. Can't do it. The final 3 masqueraders, the ones that we deal in our genre, they can't formulate. They can get to the first step of the scientific method. Yes, they can observe a natural phenomena, but they can't do anything else. They can't get to the hypothesis stage because they lack viable independent variables. Therefore, they can't isolate, test, then validate their dependent variables or their predictions. That's step 3 of the scientific method, scientific hypothesis. Hard stop. It's over. That's what I do every time now. I just get them, everyone, I test their science acumen. I start asking them, what's the hypothesis, especially for any of these characters above? Go ahead. What's the natural phenomenon first so we can get by the first 6 pretender clowns? And most of the people that we deal with out here, like I said, is in our genre, or the last 3, astrophysics, astronomy, and cosmology. They'll give me a natural phenomena. They usually do. Sometimes they'll screw it up and give me a concrete noun, but most of them, they'll get the natural phenomena, and then it's on to the next step where they fall off into the abyss. And they'll struggle, they'll bumble, fumble, and stumble with all kind of. I'm just asking them, what's the independent variable, right? And I don't know what it is. They got it in their minds. At least they got this right. They think the independent variable, the most important thing with that is that you can vary and manipulate it. And that's it. Well, if I can vary and manipulate this, then that's an independent variable. No. That's got to satisfy 3 criterion. The first thing is the independent variable in the hypothesis. It's your cause statement. It has to be the cause of your effect, or the cause of what you just observed in the first step, the dependent variable, the natural phenomena observed. That's the most important thing. Now, notwithstanding, you still have to vary and manipulate it in a scientific experiment. But that's not the only one. The cause is the most important, and obviously the independent variable has to exist. So they got big problems fitting those 3 criterion. Usually they can't do it. And it ends in an abject train wreck form. And of course they get upset, start calling me names. But we'll spend more time on independent variables, hypotheses, and experiments in later installments. So the true sciences are quantum mechanics, that's physics, genetics, biochemistry, chemistry, biochemistry, and biology. Now, there's a caveat with these guys also. Each claim from any of these disciplines must be accompanied by experiment, preferably repeated, validating each claim. So you'll get some pretender clowns in these disciplines too. No problem. If one of you guys have a claim, then you need to scientifically validate it. You don't get a get out of jail free card, right? Just because you're science, you're using your initials. No. That's all well and fine, but you're going to have to provide. I'm going to go through each step. Natural phenomena, observe. You know my routine, right? And if it's true, if it's valid, if it's science, you'll have no problem in less than 25 seconds. You're going to give me all the information I need, and we can move on to the next subject, right? But you must do it. You're not going to use your credentials or your position or the name here to float a fairy tale. I'm going to bust you, right? You already know that. However, there's been a big problem over the past, I would say, 2-3 years, where flat earthers have caught on to these guys telling them lies, right? You guys caught on to that, and you're correct. All they do up here, the last 3, is observe and declare. The first 6, they just declare. They're storytellers. They're religions, is what they are. They meet the definition of religion. However, since it's been embedded in their mind that these are sciences, right? And now that we know for an absolute fact that they've lied, then all of science should be tossed out. That is baby with the bathwater. Let's toss all this science out. Let's get it out of here. It's all fairy tale stories. That is a big mistake, because you fail to account for these guys down here who actually have experiment. So whenever you come up against these guys that have validated claims and you're saying that's nonsense, you're going to get flamethrowed. I'm warning you. I keep warning you, but like I said, for the past 3 years or so, I keep warning you not to do that. But we still have some of these guys out here that want to go down that path. Best wishes for you. Now, if they're not supported, if the claims that you're challenging are not supported by these guys, then more power to you. But if you find out that there's experiment and it's been validated, and then you're trying to say, we're going to throw all you guys out, oh boy, look out. I've been warning you. You guys, most of you guys don't listen anyway. That's okay. Just bring it up to me, right? I don't think it's going to go well for you. Like I said, if no experiment, that's cod swallop horse bucky. You need experiment. And like I said, do not fallaciously indict the actual sciences as pseudosciences. If you do, I'm going to put your ass in a sling. Simple as that. I hope you get it. Semantics. One of my favorite things. This is one of the bagaks, right? Bagak semantics. Bagak gravity. Bagak refraction. Bagak you don't understand. Bagak cherry picking, right? This is one of the, what I like to call the bagaks. That you think that covers you when you get, put into a corner. There's no way out. You think that just bagak, one of these words is going to get you out of it. Right? Is that what you think? It's pathetic. It's pathetically woeful. But I'm going to jack your yard like I usually do. So, semantics. From an unknown sage. Words. They mean things. You get it? From Anne-Marie Helmstein, PhD. I don't even know why I have to go over this. Right? What are we in? 3rd grade? Anne-Marie Helmstein, PhD, Biomedical Sciences. Words have precise meanings in science. Like I told you, at university, if I had a dime for every time I heard the word precise and accuracy, I'd have retired before the first semester. I got so sick of hearing those two phrases, just like beat it in your head. Okay, after the 556th time, I got it. You can ease up on that, brother. I got precision and accuracy. From Nielsen Peter, from NCBI, as in all scientific communication, precise language is essential for giving and receiving messages correctly. Well, duh. From Dr. Mary Schweitzer, paleontologist, North Carolina State. She's a pseudoscientist and she still knows this is correct. She said exactly. That's one of the things I drive my students crazy on. Words count. Words are important. Choose your words carefully. Huh? It all revolves around the Socratic method. A method of teaching or discussion like that used by Socrates, in which by means of a series of questions and answers, the logical soundness of a definition is tested. The meaning of a concept examined. Why is this so important? Well, it's the entire basis and foundation for just elementary communication. We have to define the terms. Now, we don't have to get pedantic what is and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. When you're bringing up certain words or certain concepts, you have to define them. And the one that you're communicating with, or the ones that you're communicating with, have to be on the same sheet of music, because if the people or your target audience is not on the same sheet of music and they're thinking about something else, you're talking about apples, they're thinking about orangutans, well, you're not going to be communicating very well. Does everyone get that? Next block of instruction, how to turn a doorknob on Tuesday evenings. Goodness sakes. Science. What is science? Well, like I said, let's define the term, right? Scientia or science or scio. Basically, it means to know or knowledge. However, natural science, when you put a qualifier in there, it means a specific thing. Subjects such as biology, this is from Cambridge, subjects such as biology, physics, and chemistry, in which things that can be seen in nature are studied. Ha! Look at that. You see, they got my true sciences in there, right? They didn't go into the biochemistry or genetics, but that's okay. You get the picture, though, right? Surprising that they put that's probably why I picked this one. You won't find too many different definitions with the actual true sciences. I'll tell you that right now. Let's go with Oxford dictionaries. Natural sciences. Intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's somewhat vague. It doesn't get too detailed, but everyone gets the gist, don't you? Or are we going to have problems with the word and? Right? And. You need observation, not just observation, and experiment. Pretty simple, you'd think. I put this citation in here a number of times for good reason. From the University of Rochester Physics Labs. The scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. What they're trying to say here is they're trying to isolate science and then differentiate it from everything else. The way it's differentiated is through systematic experimentation. If you have systematic experimentation, if you got there through a method, that is science, natural science. Pretty self-explanatory. Maybe 4th, 5th grade reading level comprehension, you got this. Probably lower. From Michael Crichton, testimony before the U.S. Senate Committee in 2005. Science is nothing more, like I said before, than a method of inquiry. When we're dealing with natural science, right? He didn't say natural science. He probably should have said that. But science is nothing more than a method of inquiry. It's simple as that. That's it. That's it. Let's go back to him one more time. Michael Crichton transcript, Caltech lecture. There is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus. Period. Why? Well, the scientific method is empirical. Consensus is subjective. Empirical is objective. They're antithetical to each other. That's why he's so confident here. From the Law Dictionary, scientific evidence, the testing of a hypothesis or theory that is objective and in a controlled environment, right? You see any equations, models, gummy bears, or pictures up in this mug? The reason why is it doesn't have anything to do with these. Get it? Let's stop right there before we get to the scientific method.
I want to reiterate a couple of the points you made, only because they're specifically directed to our side of the argument, and with good reason. So, the indictment of science based on the realization that many of the people who purvey the notion that they have science have deceived you doesn't mean that you should throw actual science under the bus. That's a big mistake. So we as flat earthers have got a lot of minds that we have to negotiate, and that's one of them. Because that, in essence, someone like Michael, who we mentioned at the beginning of the show from Vsauce, he can get away with it. Because in that particular part of his narrative, that he's declaring that he hasn't got any scientific validity, so that which he asserts is kind of, as Chocolate Same would put it, his get out of jail free card. So should it ever be asserted that it's incorrect, can declare, well, science didn't ever prove anything anyway. So yeah, of course science moves on. That's the whole point of science. No, it isn't. The fact that that man's talking with those words in his mouth about science, and he's wrong and deceiving you about the nature of reality, doesn't mean that science has deceived you. It means that that man has hijacked science, never had any science to begin with, claimed he had science, and actually had pseudoscience, and is therefore declaring that science doesn't prove anything. Now, direct your hatred towards pseudoscience. They're calling it science, it isn't. I'll do a quick shout out to Flat Earth Data, who's hit the super chat. He says, hypothesis. Off the screen. The properties of water remain the same in various scales of containment, IV is the container, and the DV is water properties, yes. No, water properties isn't a natural phenomena. Sorry. You have to be a bit more specific, Flat Earth Data, with your natural phenomena. What's happening? Happening's a phenomena. But thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate your support.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that, Flat Earth Data. Everything you said was correct, Nathan. You got it. Moving on.
Moving on. Smash the super chat to support this channel.
The scientific method. Like I said, I picked this up back in 5th grade. It's just general science. This was on the board when we walked into class. It was very close to this. Obviously, it didn't have administrative and logistical on there. I added those. But this is very simple. And there's only one method. That's why it's singular, not plural. Very simple. Very logical. Step 1, observe a natural phenomena. Step 2, literature review. Step 3, construct the formal hypothesis. Step 4, test and experiment. Step 5, data collection and analyze data. Step 6, validate or invalidate hypothesis. Step 7, report results. That's it, period. End of story. Now, I focus on these 3 that are bolded. I'm not saying that the others aren't important, and I've dismissed those, but these are the elephants in the room. I don't care what method you use. Some methods I've seen have these 3 in them, and they're fine. And they have other steps. Data collection is also added. Some of these report results is taken out. Doesn't matter. They're just administrative or logistical. Not that they're not important, especially this number 2 step. And I think I went into a discussion on that in the debate I had with negative exponents. I'm not going to do that here. Like I said, it's not that these are not important. These are the ones we want to focus on. These are indispensable. Any step you conjure or any method you conjure, it better have these 3. I'd like to go over this. And I looked at this morning, and I've read through this document many times. It's from Professor Wolf's, and it's this document right here, and I use it. He has a lot of good information on that page. On his labs page, and I use a lot of it, but there is a lot of nonsense on there. And what had happened was back in a couple years ago, I decided to go ahead and contact Professor Wolf's at the University of Rochester because I seen some truths mixed in with complete bollocks. Right? So I called his secretary. It turned out that he was on vacation at the time that I called, and I said, not a problem. I said, I'd like to talk to him when he gets back. Here's my contact information. Secretary was very nice, very polite, and I didn't think there was a problem. After 3 weeks, I called back. I said, well, I've been waiting. And she said, well, I gave him the message, but he never, I tried to contact him directly. It wouldn't happen. But what I did this morning, I said, you know what? I'm going to put the whole citation in here. The reason that I didn't put in physics, I left this out, part of it, and I put this in, but I never dealt with it. But let's go ahead and deal with these. I'm going to go through it once and I'm going to circle back. So 1, observation and description of a phenomena or group of phenomena. 2, formulation of a hypothesis to explain the phenomena. In physics, the hypothesis often takes the form of a causal mechanism or a mathematical relation. 3, use of the hypothesis to predict the existence of other phenomena or to predict quantitatively the results of new observations. And number 4, performance of experimental tests of the predictions by several independent experimenters and properly performed experiments. Now, the first problem that arises here, the first step is good. Formulation of a hypothesis to explain the phenomenon. He should have stopped right there, because the rest of this is nonsense. In physics, the hypothesis often takes, always, professor, always takes the form of a causal mechanism, full stop. That's what it should say, not a mathematical relation. No, sir. I would like to see a mathematical hypothesis. I would like to see one because they're antithetical to each other. They're achromatic rainbows. They don't exist. But he has to add them here, because if he doesn't, then he's going to get called out, because that's all they mostly deal with in physics is mathematics. Most of them think that's what it is. It looks like he just... Here, it's kind of funny to me. I look at this differently. It looks like he just did the first statement lip service, but this is what he was really trying to push. I don't know. Maybe I had textual pareidolia, but that's what I see. Number 3, use of the hypothesis to predict the existence of other phenomena. Huh? I'm not getting that. The other phenomena. So a causal relationship to a dependent variable, you're going to use it to predict other phenomena you haven't observed yet? This is non sequitur. This is nonsensical buffoonery right here. Or to predict quantitatively, this is where he's trying to shoehorn the mathematical part in the above spiel. The results of new observations. What? Quantitatively, hypotheses don't deal with quantitatively. They deal with, I redlined them for you. Just be careful. Not every, you got to chew. Like I said, a lot of people say they chew on the meat and spit out the bones. There are a lot of issues in his resource that I wanted to talk to him about. I just had, he wouldn't let me. But just be careful. Not everything you read is on the up and up. And sometimes they'll try to hide this within correct information or within the truth. I wanted to point this out to you because this is very important, right? Just be aware. From Anne-Marie Helmelstein, the number of scientific steps varies. This is for the people that say there's scientific methods, right? Plural. The number of steps varies from one description to another, mainly when data and analysis are separated into a separate step. But this is fairly standard list of 6 scientific steps which you are expected to know for any science class, right? After you get out of grade school into junior high, they'll give you a mulligan in junior high. You're still doing experiments. I don't know if they're doing it anymore. I don't think my daughter did, and I don't think my son did at junior high. Any experiments. I don't think they did. I think they did paper drills. I'm talking about actually hands-on. When I was in 5th and 6th grade, we had a lab. We had a lab, right? Bunsen burners, right? Beakers everywhere. The whole 9 yards. I don't think they had that. Not even in junior high. Right? In summary, the king of the scientific method is experiment. It's birthed from the queen hypothesis, which is then birthed from the first step of the scientific method, observe a natural phenomena. Like I said before, the critical, indispensable steps are observe a natural phenomena, formulation of a hypothesis, and then the experiment. You cannot have science that is natural science without these 3. Can't do it. 66% of the experiment is the hypothesis. 50% of the hypothesis is natural phenomena observed. You can't get out of this. You can't do it. You have to have these three. Period. End of story. Again, the scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. You must have systematic experimentation for it to be science. Period. End of story. Talk about the first step of the scientific method. Like I said, we'll deal with the other steps in later installments. Observation from McCullen Kristen. The first process in the scientific method involves the observation of a phenomena, event, or a problem. Again, back to the University of Rochester physics labs, the scientific method has 4 steps. We just went over them above. The first step, observation and description of a phenomena or group of phenomena. This is pretty cut and dry. People try to weasel out of this. I can't see how you can do that. From Niels Bohr. No phenomena is a phenomenon unless it is an observed phenomena. That means you actually have to see it, right? It has to be a repeatable phenomenon too. Can't be a one-off event. He's saying this for a reason. We're not going to get into that reason, but it's quantum mechanical. If you don't observe it, well, it's kind of didn't happen. And it's kind of not there. But we don't need to go there right now. It's not. The first step of the scientific method, it's not ask a question, Mr. Science Buddies. All right? That's where you got this from. You put scientific method into a search engine and you went to your first choice, Science Buddies. We all know where you got it. Pretty funny. Let's do it. Okay. Are ball-tarn spinning space monkeys morons? That's a question, right? Is that available for scientific inquiry? No. But it should be because you just said ask a question. I asked a question. Right? Clowns. It's not observed concrete nouns either. Can't be trees, rocks, shoes. Right? Phenomena. Something happening. You're not going to get anything out of these concrete nouns. Just going to sit there like a bag of hammers. It's not conjure a phenomena either. My word. Black holes, dark matter, multiverses, singularities, on and on and on. Not conjuring your dependent variable. You can't conjure that. What's the cause of conjuring your dependent variable? Your imagination. That's your cause. My word. Natural, everyone's favorite topic. This is coming up more and more, right? People are trying to shoehorn man-made or synthetics into the scientific method. You're not understanding the argument, for one. You clearly have a fundamental misunderstanding with just basic science, basic 5th grade general science with this. Natural science. Let's use natural first. What's natural? From Merriam-Webster, all the animals, plants, and other things existing in nature and not made or caused by people. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. This stuff's self-evident. Natural from Oxford, existing or derived from nature, not made or caused by humankind. Pretty consistent with the first definition. Vocabulary.com, natural, something that comes from nature rather than being man-made. Kind of consistent, don't you think? Cambridge, natural from nature, not artificial or involving anything made or caused by people. How can you have a definition in science that's the opposite of this? Doesn't make any damn sense. Synthetic, man-made, manufactured, created, or constructed by human beings, specifically synthetic, right? It's the opposite of natural. Synthetic is an antonym of man-made or natural. Sorry about that. From Nielsen Peter, artificial DNA, PNA, and XNA from NCBI. And I used the first statement above with semantics, but it's good. I like to stress this. As in all scientific communication, precise language, that's what we're going for here. Precise language is essential for giving and receiving messages correctly. Thus, artificial would generally mean something not found in nature, and synthetic would mean something that is man-made. That's its definition. To make a chemistry analogy, chemically synthesized B12 vitamin would not be considered artificial as it is chemically, analytically, and functionally indistinguishable from naturally isolated B12 vitamin. But, big but there. But it is not natural either, obtained from nature. It is synthetic. Very easy. Very easy to distinguish these guys. Right? So they're ad hoc, feebly conjured, made-up bollocks. The only choices are natural and supernatural is belly laughed and pummeled into the incoherent oblivion. Point of order, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. The difference between natural and synthetic can be reconciled in less than 2 friggin' seconds by any semi-coherent fourth grader. And everyone knows this. This isn't a big secret, a big mystery I'm revealing here. So now that we have identified 2 categories, natural and synthetic, that is man-made, are there any commonalities between the two, natural and synthetic? Yeah. Each has one or more of the following: chemical formula, structure, charge, matter, momentum, or spin, or millielectron volts, kcals, or kilojoules. This is the matter part. This is the energy part. So, matter or energy. However, the actual situation isn't a dichotomy, a false dichotomy, by the way. I'm going to show you why it's false right now. Because there's actually 3 choices. Natural versus synthetic or man-made versus supernatural, right? Let's delineate these guys. Number 1, natural. We already went over this above. All the animals, plants, and other things existing in nature and not made or caused by people. Synthetic is anything man-made. That is, those things that are caused by people. And number 3, supernatural. You got to chop up the word. The prefix is super and natural. So above nature or natural, that is immaterial, without matter or energy, right? If it's super, it must be above the natural. That means consisting of nothing in the natural. So here they are. The true trichotomy. Supernatural, information, time, thoughts, math, logic. There's a number of things that can go in here. Physical and natural, that's trees, water, light, frogs, and sulfur. And man-made, just like how it sounds. Cheerios, barbecue grills, shoes, headphones, and Indy cars. This can be reconciled relatively easily by incoherent fourth graders. Right? Why do I even have to go over this? But you'll get people, I'm telling you, you will get grown adults that just say there is only what? Natural and supernatural. That's the only choices that you have. They eliminate this, right? Whereas we are involved with these every single day. And we make these every single day, right? But this entire category is eliminated. What in the world? Where are you living? You're not in Narnia. You're in Narnia on angel dust. The points. Number 1, no synthetic man-made object can enter the scientific method, this is very important, as the observed natural phenomena, that is the dependent variable, the effect. Because every cause of man-made effects is, wait for it, frigging man. Why would we have to do any experiments? We already know the cause of it. And it's not natural, obviously. It's not some mystery we need to uncover. Number 2, physics, that is quantum mechanics, chemistry, biochemistry, genetics, and biology are natural sciences, not the synthetic sciences. Number 3, natural science deals with the natural world. That's why they call it natural. And are governed by the scientific method. That is hypothesis testing, experiment. May I remind you, The scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. And lastly, let's finish it up with this. Let's keep it simple. I got a 2-step algo. Step number 1 is the inquiry concerning A, nature, or B, man-made objects. Right? If it's B, then it isn't a valid scientific inquiry. If it's A, continue to step 2. Step 2 is the inquiry that is effect A, cause and effect question, or B, what is question. If it's B, then it isn't a valid scientific inquiry. If it's A, then proceed to the first step of the scientific method. Everyone got this? Very simple. Broke it down here for you. Everyone can follow it. Logically sound. It all follows. And again, let me finish this up. The scientific method distinguishes science from other forms of explanation because of its requirement of systematic experimentation. That is, for it to be science, then you gotta have experiment. To have experiment, you have to have a hypothesis. And to have a hypothesis, you have to observe a natural phenomenon. You have to have a dependent variable. Follow sunshines. Questions, comments?
First, a couple of shout-outs, or a shout-out to Sleeping Warrior. Says, my egg test was a test, i.e. experiment, because I learned from QE. Boom. So there you go. Thank you very much, Sleeping Warrior, from Superchat. On the last paragraph before the last one that you just read out, explain the steps that you have to go through to qualify a dependent variable. And this is implied. It's not necessary to obviously add this as a sentence, but it was stated earlier on in the presentation, and it's quite important. And I know this will get covered again in one of the later presentations when we're talking about independent variables, but it's worth stressing in this instance and has been covered anyway, which is to say that your dependent variable has to actually be observed. You actually have to see it occurring. So in your paragraph, I think you wrote the word effect. Now, by putting in brackets the word effect, it's implied that you've actually got to see that effect happening, as opposed to conjure an effect, possibly by way of some mathematics, and then claim that you're going to science it when you haven't actually observed anything occurring. A good example of this would be the bending of space-time. Oh yeah, that's an effect, is it? All right, show me. Show me that occurring. Oh, you can't? Well, then it's not a dependent variable. So you have to actually see the occurrence. And also, again, this has already been stressed by Quantum Eraser, not just a one-time occurrence. And I've seen a light in the sky vanish, for the sake of argument. Now let's science that. No. That's not how it works. You've got to actually vary something to make it happen. So what you're going to do, make the light reappear and then vary something to make it disappear again? Obviously not. So it's not just good enough to have something occurring. It's got to be a phenomena that you can see happening again and again, so you know you can actually cause it with something as opposed to a one-time event. So just to stress those two things, it's not just a single one-time event when you're studying phenomenon. And number two, it's got to actually be something you can study, i.e. you've got to see it happen. You can't just conjure it from maths.
Yes, sir. Arwen, any comment?
Talk about hammering down the details of the scientific method. Yeah, of course, we've been talking about this for a very long time, and I really get it. It's very hard to escape when you just hear just mind-numbing amounts, basically going through it over and over again. Eventually, it's just like, yes, master, this is okay. But it took some time.
Sure.
I even did, in a way, get it when I was younger. Like, I would like to loop back a bit to something that was brought up earlier. Like, in school, like, I had a really creepy realization. even back then, that kind of science was abandoned by the system. Like, I figured that out back then even, and I didn't really know what to do with it. It would kind of, conjured desperation. And then I just kind of like wandered off because it was too much pressure. I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life and all that. So, but yeah, they did. They did actually do that. And now we have to make things right. That's how I feel. And I hope that the Ballbusters can be a big part of that. Said it right.
Well, thank you, Arwen. Get back to your master claim. Listen, guys, I'm not some type of freaking guru on high and stuff. I have no issue with going over this many times. I think a great part of, or a good part of, necessary part of education is to keep going over and over stuff, right? Number one. Number two, there has never been any time where I have sat there on high and said this method, whatever it may be, whether it be the scientific method, doesn't matter what it is, that these subjects are off limits and this is final, dogmatic, the final word, that's it. No. Listen, I explain these things. I break them down as far as I can. I go through each systematically with supporting evidence. If you got a problem with it, just come. And it's happened many a day where Ballbuster staff or somebody on the show has said, no, I disagree with that, and here's why. So there will never be, there come a point in time, there will never be a time where that's not allowed, just to make sure everyone knows that.
It just takes some time to get used to it, you know? They've been convincing us for such a long time from so many angles that you don't have to listen to this anymore. It's not important. We've reinvented science into something that they can make into whatever they like. And it's a big lie. And we're trying to set things straight. And it's tough to get through that because of the sheer amount of these people that basically break these rules and just go with that. So many of them out there now that they're the majority. So that's what you're hearing all day long if you're gonna click around on the TV or on the internet. And it's tough to let that sink in.
Well, it's often harder with people that gone through the education system that have some sort of what they think are science backgrounds, and they run into me because it's just difficult because it's so difficult to unlearn garbage and get it out of your head. It's so much easier, and Nathan and I have talked about this at length. It's so much easier if you have sort of a blank slate. I don't mean, stupid. I'm just saying that you haven't been involved in it. You haven't been indoctrinated in the wrong thing. So it's hard to root that stuff out, man, because it's like an Alabama tick. You can't get that stuff out of there very easily. So
you get addicted to it.
Say again?
You get addicted to it.
Yeah.
It is like a fantasy, and once you feel that power of like this fake creation in your mind, it's addicting. Once you take that as your own. So, I know,
I think that's one of the reasons we've got the PhDs bracing against us and actually interacting with us at the moment, because they recognise that power that they'll lose, that they perhaps took for granted until now, and it takes somebody to give them a bit of a wake-up shock and say, actually, what you're saying isn't science. Someone like Spurs, and suddenly they get very angry about it. Now, I think, like I say, at some level, they must recognise that, or they just get about their day. Oh, silly flat earthers. I don't need to concern myself about their declaration that I'm not adhering to the scientific method because I am. Well, they wouldn't worry, would they? They wouldn't be here. But they are, because they've got something to lose now. They've got their power, as you put it, Arwen, very concisely. Yes, absolutely correct. I was going to...
And their money.
Because that detrimental comment was going to lead me on to say about Dr. John Dee. Well, Dr. John Dee, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I've said it a couple of times. He's never called me on it and said, you bastard. But nevertheless, when we first started interacting with him, I had recently been very well educated in this subject by Quantum Eraser, and I'm very grateful to him for it. But it was shortly after challenging Bob on science. And then I'm in a position where I'm discussing science with somebody who's way, way more educated than I am, and having to correct him on his incorrect use of the word science. And instantly, as soon as I explained to him why his use of the word was incorrect, he agreed, because at a base level, Dr. John D instinctively knew exactly what I meant and knew I was right. I was like, yes, of course I understand that you've got to have an independent variable. However, and he braced against it, because the study that he's been doing is, in some areas, labelled incorrectly as science. Now, the studies that he's doing, it's not to in any way decry those studies. The information that he has exposed in those areas of spectroscopy are still absolutely valid. He's still just detailing what he studied. But it isn't establishing cause and effect. Now, there's no need to actually claim that it's establishment of cause and effect, and in some instances it may be. But it's only upon declaration of it being science, when it's actually a study, that it becomes a problem. And as I say, because he's not as Quantum Eraser, or was not as Quantum Eraser described it, a blank canvas, which I think without pouring any shame on myself, he's talking about me, right? You're talking about me. Sorry about the third person. You're talking about me, right?
Yes.
I'm not in some industry that relies on me giving validity to what I say by saying science. When I was in sales as a representative, I never claimed that the technology I was selling was valid for the reasons I gave because of science. Now, coincidentally, there are people who I now am studying who work in the exact same arena I used to, who absolutely do say it when they're measuring things. Now, were I to challenge them and say, actually, this isn't science, there's a good chance that because their audience has warmed to their information, which is well researched also, I'm not decrying their validity when they've measured something very accurately. Just isn't science. And there's going to be people who realise that upon saying science, it was a quick route to get people to just understand that what they're saying is correct. I've made this measurement. It's a very accurate measurement. This is what I've measured. This is the number that's attributed to it. Within the convention, it is correct. If you have to go through all that, people will glaze over. If you just say, it's science, they nod along instantly. Well, you might lose that if you're claiming science where you haven't necessarily got it. So there is something definitely a degree of power that will be lost by these pseudoscientists. Now, some of them, like Dr. John D, I mean, I say it took a while. It was about 3 emails, but after a discourse, he was like, "Yeah, you're right. I will have to adjust my vernacular." And the vernacular, it was a contentious point because he was saying that he was going to do an experiment at Brighton with a laser. I'm like, you're kind of ruining our point here, which is why I had to address it with him. It was really awkward because he's such a nice guy. And I'm having to say, I know you're a PhD. I know you've got far more education than I have, but you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you why, and you've got to stop doing it. Or else. Not or else.
Or
you know what I'm saying?
it was a shit sandwich.
It was a shit sandwich. It was one of them. And he was very, very understanding of it. But somewhere, without divining his thoughts, somewhere there's got to be a recognition that, well, where I've said science and experiment, I can't say that anymore. And it did lend more credence to what I was saying in the same way that the pseudoscientists who deceived us to be on a ball used the exact same magic trick. Now, that's not saying that the people who say science, like the people testing bloody wires and amplifiers, are bad people or liars. They're not. They're just subject to the same convolution of this vernacular of science as everybody else. We've all been subject to it, and some of us fall into the trap of claiming science where we haven't got any. But for those of you who have it pointed out to you and then rebel against it, you're just becoming a liar, and you have to accept that.
Yeah, it's a good point, Nathan. I just broad brushed everyone with what people think are science degrees, even people that have science degrees. It's not everyone. Listen, there's a couple of people, and you brought up Dr. John D. There's a couple other people that I've run into that have some, how would we say, intellectual integrity. And I knew when I first started into the discussion, they got real quiet and they figured it out real quick. There's nothing they could say against it. Right? Adam, I knew Adam because I knew he had a wicked science background, right? And I was just sitting back smiling, right? Until I could talk to him. It only took like 2 or 3 sentences. He got real quiet. That's when I knew. And I know he remembers the time. So shout out to Adam. Hope everything's going well, sir.
Who's one of the best people in the world. If you're listening, Adam, you're ace.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, Adam is ace.
All right. Well, listen. Let's I'll just go down the list right here. We don't have a lot of ballbusters and staff, but we have a few people that have joined. I'll take you off mute, and any comments, questions, concerns, try to stick to the subject material that I just went over in the presentation. I'd appreciate it. So, Buster 2, you're on the air, sir.
No questions, just listening in. Sounds great.
Outstanding. Thank you. John Shelton, you are on the air.
I don't have anything to say. It sounds good though. Good
You
job.
don't have anything to say. You just said something. I'm just messing with you, John. Thanks, man. Hank Kill, sir.
Yeah,
You're
I
on the
do got
air.
a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take off the so that you can hear me better.
Hold on a second.
Right. So it's brought to my attention the other day that flat earthers are being too strict with what they call science, right? And I said, okay, I'll partially agree to that. Okay. And I said, what about ball earthers being too liberal, slapping it on everything? And they wouldn't even entertain the idea for a moment, even though I just agreed with them that, yeah, maybe flat earthers are being too strict, right? Too conservative with what they call science. So I think what they've done this whole time is they've just slapped the label science on everything, including philosophy. And I think that it's a disservice to science itself. It's like crying wolf. And if they keep doing this, literally people are going to figure it out, because if we're calling them out, people are going to realize what's going on. And eventually science is going to lose all merit. And I think that would just be a travesty for mankind in general.
Hopefully that won't happen, Hank. Arwen, go ahead. You got something to say about
Right. Yeah. I get totally what Hank is talking about. It is, though, not really science. It's about people talking about science on media. That is gonna like get a real bummer moment after a while when it sinks in, because the people talking about science, because people are gonna lose interest once they figure out it's fake. That's basically the response.
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
it. Go ahead, Hank.
Go ahead, Hank.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like either these guys need to like shape up or ship out, because what they're doing is they're kind of debunking something that's actually real. It's like when people claim racism, but no racism actually occurred. And then now in 2020, the word racist has, it's lost its zing. It's lost its power. And it's because people call out fake racism all the time. And I think the same thing is happening to the science thing, because you can't just label like colloquial theories science, right? That's not honest, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, spot on. And I think that's partially why presentations like this are being done by Quantum Eraser and by Ballbusters in general, because we don't want people to throw science under the bus because people have lied about having science. Recognize what is science, and it's still the same method it always was. And the reason they've nicked it, the reason they've hijacked it, is because it's empirical, to lend empiricism to their just so stories. So yeah, I think it is critically important that it doesn't go the same way as you juxtaposed it with racism, where it loses all meaning. In other words, people say, "Oh, right, these people who have used science have lied, therefore science doesn't prove anything." And you go, no, we need to make it absolutely clear that they never had science. So science is still the exact same empirical method it always was. It still benefited humanity the way it always has done. And the people who've hijacked it, they're the people that need calling out. And it's people, not the method. can't anthropomorphize this method into people. It doesn't have lips, it doesn't have lungs, it can't speak. It's not an entity, it's just a method. And the method is empirical. That's why it's been stolen.
All right, so even though I agree with Quantum Eraser, I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to ask them the question. So, John, have you been too conservative with what science means or what science is? And if you have, can you point it out?
No. And no. No and no and NA. Not applicable.
You can't be
Right,
too
because
conservative or strict with something that's rigorously defined. And is rigorously defined so it is empirical. In other words, to be empirical, you've got to be really strict and narrow in terms of what the method actually does. And it is strict and it is narrow. That's why it's empirical. If you go, oh, well, let's not just have one independent variable, we could just have two. Why are we being so strict? Well, then you're not going to have empiricism at the end of the method. So no, you can't be too strict with it. You either adhere to the method and have an empirical outcome, or you don't.
Hey, QE, in reflection to the elaborate presentation you gave, especially about the difference between supernatural, natural, and man-made, and phenomena have to be natural, right? So what if you, for example, are an industrialist and you've created all these very complex polymers and all, definitely man-made, like every step of the way, and you got a material and it has these unique, this unique ability, and you want to define it. And you want to try to use the scientific method with it, but it's definitely man-made, except it has a side effect, as it were. What do you do? How is it just because a man made it, even though it is definitely repeatable? If the whole production process was exactly repeated, the same phenomenon would come out of it. But it's man-made. What do you do?
Well, it comes down to your question, right? The question, it has to be natural. So if it's man-made, then it's not natural science. That's my answer.
But what do you have as an alternative?
I don't.
Because it is definitely real and repeatable.
Yeah, that's fine, but it's just not natural science.
But what would you then classify it under?
I don't know. Synthetic science, that's fine. You classify it as that. We're just not in that business.
Okay, so chemistry or engineering, perhaps, or how?
Subcategories of chemistry deal with synthetics, yes, but that's not natural science.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to clear that up because, there are some very interesting, unique properties that have come out of purely man-made processes.
Sure. Oh, I'm not saying that they're false. Yeah, this is not. This has nothing to do with whether something is true or false. It's solely the method, right? Those things are obviously true. There's many synthetics, my word, in chemistry. I'm just saying it's not natural science. That's all I'm saying.
I just wanted to clarify because, a lot of people, because of what they have done with the word of science culturally,
sure.
Rob Dill allowed everything can be science, like that. People start to associate it with these types of things as well. And, you don't want to give them a sense like that's all lost. It doesn't mean anything anymore just because the science has been misapplied, as it were, the word.
Right. I think that they might be sort of, how would you want to say, sort of abnormally attached to the word. So
right.
Yeah. That it's probably a deeper issue that they need to deal off to the side. It's just not natural science. Doesn't mean it's not true. It's just not natural science. Follow?
Okay.
Yep.
Good enough for now.
Neil, comments, questions, concerns, plaints.
Yeah, like Am I coming in okay? Am I breaking up?
No, you're fine.
Like Nathan was saying earlier, these guys are afraid to lose their power. On his re-up of the show this morning, you had Phil Bell on there, alive in chat, claiming he's a scientist, claiming he sends satellites into orbit, and he makes money. He gets paid for it. But he refused to answer my question of how he moves these satellites.
So Phil Bell, Phil Bellin, I'm quite familiar with him. Don't know really what to say. He doesn't know what natural science is, that's for sure. Yeah, he's got major problems.
It's not water vapor is either.
Yeah.
The guy who's claimed to be working in hydrology, claims to be a scientist, sits around on a panel full of thick ballers laughing at us because we said water vapor is gas, and said that was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard.
There's not much I could do with that. I mean, it is what it is. He said what he said. He's going to have to live with it. It's not even that it's wrong, and it's almost too stupid to even comment on it. I just boom on past now. Anything else, Neil?
No, I'm still here listening. Keep going.
Rob, you had something to say. Go ahead, sir. Rob, you're on the air, man. I know that you're working. He messaged me and said he was working. He had something to say. Go ahead. Oh, so Rob's question was, let me get back to it 1 second. I want to make sure I get it right. I just wanted to say they have been using the term observational science. Huh. Really? As opposed to what? Because observational science is painfully redundant. The first step in the scientific method is observation. If they're trying to put that out as just observation and that's it, then they're clueless clowns, man. That's what I have to say about that. Nathan, anything to say about that?
It's just embarrassing. Like we've said it throughout the whole show. I think these people are here, and the programming that they've been subject to leads them to acting like morons. Now, yes, we often highlight how stupid people like Thunderfoot and Just Phil Bell are. I blame the programming. You know, it's so deeply ingrained into their psyche that in defense of it, they'll say the most ludicrous and stupid things. And I'm not trying to compliment them, but I don't think these people are stupid. Clearly, by their education level, they're not stupid. They'll come out with the most ludicrous things because of their globe programming. And it is quite sad.
I agree. Flat World Logic. You're on the air, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, you back?
Rob, you back?
Mic discipline, please. All right, Rob's working. We'll move on. Hey, Rebel. What's up? 1 second. Yeah, you're off mute. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, John. Hey, thanks for the presentation. Listen, I heard you mentioning this, and over the years that the panel discussed this, and I'm not quite sure as to why, like earlier in conversation with Arvin, you qualified science by saying natural science.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little perplexed. Like, is it implied that the science is natural, or does it have to be qualified?
Yeah, remember, I went over what science means. Science, scientia, scio, it means knowledge. But specifically with natural science, natural science is concerned with the method. Like Nathan said, it is heavily invested in empiricism. It has to be empirical. That's what sets natural science apart from everything else. Follow?
I do. So it's natural phenomena would probably make it natural science, right?
Yes, it has to be a natural phenomenon to be natural science. Yeah, the dependent variable, that's the key. Yes.
So would I be correct in asserting that perhaps there is logically would be qualification of something that's called synthetic science to do with
Sure.
synthetic phenomena? Okay.
I don't know about synthetic phenomenon. I'd have to hear, actual specific case. It's not going to be natural right off the bat. You already know that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It would be something man-made, yeah.
Yeah, it would be something man-made. Nothing, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not dragging these guys around by their short hairs. Only the biggest problem is it's a category error. They're outside natural science. That's what we're dealing with here. Now, if they want to do all their synthetics and find synthetic answers and stuff, that's great. That's fine. I have no issue with it. It's not natural science, though. Anything else, Rebel?
No, aside from like when we mentioning science, then the word science, that's my initial question. Do we always imply it is natural, or do we have to always qualify it?
I'd qualify it. I tried to do that. Sometimes I forget because it's just pardon the pun, natural just to say science, right? We all know what we're talking about, but maybe I need to be more specific. I've been trying to do that recently, is to stress natural science, to go ahead and differentiate physics, chemistry, biochemistry, biology, genetics, that sort of thing from everything else. But you're right. I should probably do that a little bit more.
I don't necessarily think it's the case, though. I don't think you need to, just to put a different spin on that. Yeah, you could be more specific and say natural science every single time, but based on the arena we're in, doesn't it ipso facto automatically mean natural science? That's the only science we could be dealing with.
Yes.
Yeah. So why bother qualifying it? Ipso facto is natural science. We're dealing with physics. So the natural world is the nature of the topic we're discussing. I don't think it needs qualifying. Just to put a different spin on it, yes, you could be more specific and say natural science every time. I just don't think it's necessary.
Cool.
Well, it may be necessary. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. And if somebody comes into arena and says they're a scientist and they're not dealing with natural phenomena, perhaps they're chemists or some other field, technically they will be correct, isn't it?
That's still natural science.
Just be careful. In some of the chemistries, like we talked about, there is a lot of synthetics going on. And like I said, there's no problem with that. Like I said, we deal with specificity. You always got to get specific. Don't broad brush anything. Like another example, biology, right? You can't take everything in biology and say, well, that is biology science or not science. Well, parts of it are definitely not, right? If you're not doing experiments, if you're a secretary or you're a biologist categorizing things in conventions and not conducting experiments, you're not a scientist. You may call yourself one, but it's going to go down in flames if you get within whistling distance of me and come out with that nonsense. And I will systematically give the reasons why. I will support it, and there's no way out.
Although it's going to get covered on a different show, it's back to the conjuring of phenomena and the conjuring of independent variables that don't really exist. Now, what you've got to watch for isn't necessarily whether or not the science category's been defined correctly. It's the assertion coming from your opponent actually valid within science? And normally that will mean that they don't have anything to actually observe, i.e. no natural phenomena, or they've got a natural phenomena and they've invented a claimed cause of the effect. It's just watching how and why they've applied this word science. And if they have applied it correctly, you want to know, do they have an independent variable? That would be a presumed cause of the effect. And what is the effect they've actually observed? Now, in the category, I've said this once already, but in the arena that we're sat in, everything's going to be covered by natural science if science is being asserted.
I agree, yes.
And when it isn't, that's when you've got to catch them. because they're going to be asserting natural science, i.e. the empiricism that the method of natural science has offered, when they're actually using mathematics. It's catching them on their bait and switch between mathematical formulas and mathematical experiments, which they're not, and actual natural science, which is to say cause and effect, phenomena with presumed cause being validated with the experiment. Is that what they've claimed? If so, they can give you independent and dependent variables. If not, it's pseudoscience.
Right, it goes back to experiment and observation all the time. Yeah.
Observation of phenomena and experiment to validate the cause of the phenomena. But yes.
So when I say I'm gonna perform an experiment, I'll put 2 tires on my car and I'll test which one of them better. That is not the cause and effect question. That would be what is question.
Exactly.
Therefore,
You got it. Yeah, you got all kind of problems with that, but you got it. Remember the algo.
Yeah, you're precisely right.
How do I call it? I want to do an experiment, like colloquially speaking. I can't even think of the right word. What is it? I'm going to do a measurement.
Yep.
Doesn't sound right.
Let me just clarify that for you, Rebel. So it depends on the setting of the conversation. So if the setting of the conversation is scientifically based, and an experiment is automatically within that terminology that you're using, going to mean the establishment of cause and effect with an experiment. That's what an experiment means when you say it in that terminology, with science being the underpinning of the conversation. However, if your son is out on his BMX experimenting with wheelies, yeah, that's perfectly acceptable as a word in the colloquial vernacular. You can say that you are experimenting colloquially. But it's when your setting is claimed to be or deemed to be scientific. Same goes for things like tests. I'm just testing out my bike doing some wheelies. I'm just experimenting with my wheelies on my BMX. Well, that's perfectly acceptable in that setting. But when you say, I'm going to test the cause of that light disappearing in the sky, yeah, then you are categorizing your assertion within science. So you're going to be doing a test. Well, that's an experiment then. Let's have the hypothesis then. What the natural phenomena is the light and what it does in the sky are perfectly acceptable phenomena if it's reoccurring. What's the cause of it? What are you going to vary and manipulate to establish as the cause of that effect? And what was your null? All of those things can be established once you've, again, it's back to the correct terminology, established that we are definitely talking about natural phenomena, natural science, as opposed to colloquial experimentation with drugs or with wheelies or with food. Those things aren't scientifically based when you categorize them or talk about them. So there's no need to say, you say that you've experimented with the amount of zest from the lemon in the cake. What's your independent variable? No. Just because the word experiment's been used in that context doesn't mean it's a scientific test. But the way we use it in this arena, absolutely, or 99% of the time, is going to be scientific in terms of how it's being discussed. So you can demand an independent variable when they say science. Or experiment, I should say, sorry.
Right, context matter. If we're talking in the context of science, then the word experiment takes completely different meaning rather than using it colloquially.
Nicely.
Right?
Is that it, Rebel?
That's it.
Appreciate it, sir. Rob, did you make it back? Did I answer your question? All right, he hasn't made it back yet. No problem. Skeptical.
Oh,
1 second, sir. You are on the air.
Hold on, we got Rob. Oh, Rob. Woo, shout out to you, Rob.
Sorry about that, Skeptical. Rob, you back?
Yeah, I am, but I'm not. I got lots of noise going on, so I'm listening though.
Okay, cool.
You did answer my question. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Go ahead, Skeptical. Hold on, Skeptical. Nathan, you had something?
I'm just saying, I'm shouting out Rob. Out to Rob Keane. Good to have you.
Skeptical. I think you're good. 1 second.
Nathan is ace.
Nathan is ace. You're correct. Is that it?
think that's it.
I think that. Go ahead.
Skeptical.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello, guys. Am I coming through?
Yes.
loud and clear.
Oh, right. So,
Not
first
query.
of all, much appreciation. Quantum, Nathan, for the honestly for the presentation for the Master Science Part 1. It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, man. And I've yeah.
It was 99% quantum eraser, but I'll take at least 50% credit. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I have no problem with that.
Half. Okay, yeah. It was actually, very interesting presentation, and I got a lot of points, particularly regarding the semantics and differences between, synthetic, natural, and supernatural. That was really a very, very nuanced distinctions and observation you made. So, I've got some points here, right? And they've got at the end of it a question, right? First of all, we know that science, it starts with in the first, basically, the scientific method or scientific inquiry. The first step is we make an observation, right? We observe. So under the observation itself, observation must scientifically fulfill three inseparable important requirements. The first requirement must be the feasibility of it, because as we know, the scientific inquiry is a very strict, rigorous process. So the feasibility, what I mean about that is for instance, for an observation to be feasible, that observation must be taken from the natural physical world, and the physical, I would say, reality must reflect your own observation instead of coming from your mind, as we know with astronomy, cosmology, and astrophysics. So this is a very important thing, the feasibility of it. The second feature regarding the epistemological relevancy when it comes to the selection of dependent and control variables. It is a very fundamental, step as well. And finally, the third one, it is the observation must be free from axiomatic beliefs, right? For instance, who made this car? We know. Who made this computer? We know. Observation, it's a self-evident truth. Man made it. It's a synthetic. That's why the first step itself must be taken very seriously.
I agree.
Must satisfy the feasibility, the epistemological relevance, and finally must be free from axiomatic beliefs. This is just, a remark that I made about that. But I have got a question, Quantum. It's my question is about social sciences like economics, psychology, sociology, whatever, humanities.
Mhm.
So would you consider social sciences to be natural sciences,
No.
like economics?
No.
Or why?
No natural phenomena observed. You might get
It's
close.
supernatural.
Yeah, you might get close with psychology. You might get close and pick up a natural phenomenon. I don't know. Like I said, I don't like the broad brush things, but if we were going to broad brush things, they're not natural sciences because they don't observe natural phenomena.
Because we know, for instance, in economics, we observe certain phenomena, for instance.
Yeah, it's man-made.
If there's
Economics, you can't have economics without man.
obviously,
Yep.
because the subject itself is man, is us, is individuals. Yeah, I see.
Yep.
I see.
The cause. We've already got the cause. No
Sorry?
need for. We've already got the cause. So the cause of is man, and we know the cause, so no need for science.
Yep. Is that all you got, Skeptical?
Oh yeah, honestly, thank you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Unorthodox. Was here a second ago and then you took off. Lovely. I think that's the last one that we got. Let me run through here real quick. Yep. Chocolate. What's up, sir?
Yo, what's up, guys?
We're
How's
just
everybody doing?
Yeah, we're just about to close up. Perfect timing.
Yep. No. Yeah, it's one of those days. Couldn't make it on time, but yeah, I caught like very end. So you already know where I stand. So what you say makes sense, and I'm good with that.
Cool. So we'll go
Yeah.
down. Hey, well, might as well go with final thoughts. Chocolate, go ahead. Your final thoughts on coming in here late.
Yeah, I came in late.
Yeah, you
man.
did. That's good final thoughts, man. Anything on the horizon for you?
That geometric horizon or apparent one? Oh wait, we don't see the geometric. Okay, yeah. So yeah, no, nothing on the apparent horizon coming up.
You got any tracks you're laying down?
Yeah, I do have a song that I'm trying to put together, and I think it's pretty much done. But yeah, want to finalize it and get it out there. Just having fun making music, because why not, right? Smoke if you got 'em. The globe is dead already.
Exactly.
Just cleaning it up.
What else we
So
gonna
in the
do, right?
meantime, right? Yeah, might as well make some music while we're cleaning it up, right?
Huh. Are you the only one making tracks?
No, definitely not. There's a few people on 24/7 that I mess with that are actually starting to do their own thing too. Like Elijah, Witsit gets it starting to spit a few raps, and yeah, you're out there putting some music out, so why not, man?
I got you. Yeah. Well, thanks, Chocolate. Even though you came in late, thanks for coming, man.
All right, yes, please say it again.
Yeah, we'll catch you. We'll catch you later. We'll talk later.
I'm sure you will.
Arwen, final thoughts, channel, promotion, and anything new on your horizon, sir.
Yeah, Flat Earth Early Bird Show. Every day, 2 p.m. Amsterdam time. Over at Arwen's. Yeah, I was kind of in the middle of having dinner. So, but yeah, good show. Very clear. And I was glad that I was able to make a couple of points. And yeah, keep it up.
Cool. Thanks, Nathan, sir. Take us home.
Just to all the flat earthers out there, don't indict science. It is merely a method. The method is empirical, and to indict it is to throw under the bus all of the advancements in humanity that science has offered, simply because pseudoscience pretender clowns have hijacked the vernacular. Shout out to me, as I've got a premiering stream that's running on Nathan Oakley channel immediately. I've started it going right now, so check it out. If you're in the live stream of this stream, check out the chat that's going by. I'll be spamming a link to that, so if you want to go and continue the conversation in the chat over there, it's running immediately. So be here or be sphere for Flat Earth Debate, uncut and after show on Nathan Oakley channel. A massive thank you to everybody on the BALLBUSTERS panel, including all of the public participants, for offering their 2 pennyworth on this part of the science presentation. Master of Science Part 2 will be in 2 weeks' time, so be here or be sphere on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. Massive thanks, of course, to Quantum Eraser for hosting this show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and over to Quantum Eraser to round out with his last few thoughts.
You didn't leave me much on the bone there, sir. So, no problem. Thanks to all the guests, audience members. Don't let them fool you out there. They're going to try some of their little tricksies. But you guys, you got the information. All the information, all you have to do is come on to my channel and hit those playlists. That's where the gold is. Right? Most of those on the playlist, if you look, always check the description box. I try to put the topics of the discussions in there for the most part, especially with science education, right? And you just start off at episode 1 and go through them like 50 times to hook you right up. Next week, like he said, it'll be Science, Master of Science presentation part 2. And that's in 2 weeks. So you all hang in there, and we'll see you then.